There are certain psychological triggers that, once activated, can ruin your reputation, shatter your confidence, and hand your power to someone who never deserved it. Most people walk through life completely blind to them. But Machiavelli wasn't blind. He understood centuries ago that the downfall of kings, generals, and empires often begins with a single invisible trigger, a button someone pushes so quietly, so subtly, that the victim never realizes they've been manipulated until it's too late. This video is your warning, because whether you like it or not, someone somewhere is studying you, testing your reactions, probing your mind, searching for the emotional pressure point that will make you break. And if you ignore these triggers, if you pretend they aren't real, you will lose battles you never even realized you were fighting. Machiavelli once wrote, "He who is the cause of another becoming powerful is ruined." But the modern version is even darker. He who allows others to control his emotions becomes powerless without even noticing. Today, you'll learn 10 dark psychological triggers that can destroy you unless you master them first. Every trigger comes with a lesson, a warning, an affirmation to help you harden your mind, and a real-world scenario so you never mistake these traps again. Take a breath. The next several minutes might change everything. Lesson 1: The trigger of ego provocation. There is a reason your ego is the easiest weapon to use against you. People don't need to attack you with force. They just need to make you feel disrespected, dismissed, undervalued. Your ego jumps in. Your emotions rise. And suddenly, you're no longer strategic. You're reactive, predictable, manipulable. This is the oldest tactic in power psychology. Julius Caesar used it. Sun Tzu wrote about it. Machiavelli perfected it. Someone insults you? Someone challenges your intelligence? Someone questions your worth? You think you're defending yourself, but you're actually falling into a psychological trap they set for you within seconds. Real-world scenario. A coworker says, "You sure you can handle this project?" Not because they doubt you, but because they want you flustered, emotional, off balance. And that's enough for them to gain leverage. Most people respond immediately. That's the fatal mistake. Effective affirmation. My ego does not respond. My strategy does. Machiavelli's reminder. Never respond to provocation from weakness. Pause. Observe. Choose silence or a calculated reply. That's how you become untouchable. Lesson 2: The trigger of uncertainty. Humans fear the unknown more than suffering. When people don't know what's happening, they panic. They assume the worst. They give away control in exchange for clarity. This is why uncertainty is one of the strongest tools used in manipulation. Those who seek power create confusion. They hide intentions. They misdirect. And while you scramble to understand, they make silent moves. Carl Jung once said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own unconscious." When you fear uncertainty, you become predictable. When you embrace uncertainty, you become dangerous. Real-world scenario. You text someone. They wait hours before responding. Your mind spirals. You overthink. You adjust your behavior to win back their attention. This is not accidental. It is a silent form of psychological dominance. Effective affirmation. Uncertainty does not control me. I stand solid in the unknown. Master uncertainty, and you master both yourself and every game around you. Lesson 3: The trigger of emotional overinvestment. People who care too quickly or too intensely are the easiest to manipulate. That's the brutal truth. When someone senses that you want something, approval, attention, validation, connection, they know exactly which lever to pull. They can give you a little, pull back, give again, withdraw again, and suddenly you are addicted to their inconsistency. Robert Greene calls this the logic of seduction. Not romantic seduction, psychological seduction, the kind used by leaders, manipulators, narcissists, and strategists. Real-world scenario. You share your ideas in a group. One particular person shows subtle interest, then cold distance, then interest again. You don't notice what's happening. Your brain starts chasing the warmth. You invest more. They invest less. You give power. They take it. Effective affirmation. I invest only where investment is earned, not where it is demanded. Cold balance is the antidote. Emotional control is your shield. Lesson 4: The trigger of social comparison. This is a modern psychological battlefield. People want you to compare yourself to them. Your life, your progress, your worth. Why? Because comparison triggers insecurity, and insecurity triggers compliance. The person who feels inferior subconsciously seeks approval from the one they see as superior. It's an ancient psychological pattern, and Machiavelli understood it well. Real-world scenario. A colleague subtly brags about their new project or big achievement, not to celebrate, but to quietly make you feel behind. When you feel behind, you become easier to lead, easier to direct, easier to influence. This is not about envy. It's about hierarchy. Effective affirmation. I do not measure myself against others. I measure myself against who I was yesterday. The moment you stop comparing, you stop being controlled. Lesson 5: The trigger of forced urgency. When someone pushes you to decide now, it's rarely for your benefit. It's almost always a psychological maneuver. Urgency shuts down logic. It accelerates emotional decision-making. It pulls you into traps you would have avoided with a calm mind. Psychologists call this the fight-or-flee decision loop. Machiavelli called it something simpler. The moment of greatest pressure is the moment of greatest danger. Real-world scenario. A boss says, "We need your answer in the next 5 minutes." Not true, but they know rushing you gives them the upper hand. Friends, partners, salespeople, anyone can use this. Effective affirmation. I do not rush for anyone. I decide on my terms. Slowness is not laziness. It is strategy. Lesson 6: The trigger of validation hunger. There is a certain type of person who can control you without ever raising their voice, without ever making a demand, without ever showing aggression. All they have to do is withhold validation. Humans are wired to seek approval from the tribe. From childhood to adulthood, the brain treats validation as safety and rejection as danger. This is why manipulators use it like currency. They smile at you one day, ignore you the next, compliment you once, then go cold for a week. You begin to chase their approval without realizing you're chasing it. That's the trap. Robert Greene wrote, "The person who cannot live without the approval of others is a slave in their own mind." Real-world scenario. A person you respect suddenly becomes indifferent toward you. You start wondering what you did wrong. You change your tone, your behavior, your presence, just to win back their warmth. They didn't dominate you with force. They dominated you with absence. Effective affirmation. I do not chase approval. I generate it from within. When validation stops controlling you, you stop being controlled by anyone. Lesson 7: The trigger of guilt manipulation. Guilt is a silent chain, a mental shackle, a weapon used by people who lack authority but crave power. Manipulators don't need to blame you outright. They simply imply disappointment. They use sighs, silence, subtle comments like, "I thought you cared. I guess I was wrong about you. I didn't expect this from you." These phrases are psychological daggers. Guilt is effective because it makes you police yourself. You become the enforcer of someone else's expectations. Carl Jung warned, "The most dangerous things are not the ones we see, but the ones we feel obligated to respond to." Real-world scenario. You try to set a boundary. You say, "I can't make it tonight," or "I'm busy." Instead of respecting it, they reply, "Oh, okay. I guess I'll manage." That's guilt tripping, a tactic to make you abandon your boundaries. Effective affirmation. I do not bend under guilt. My boundaries stand without apology. Guilt only works on those who feel responsible for everyone's emotions. Free yourself from that illusion. Lesson 8: The trigger of fear-based compliance. Fear is the oldest instrument of power. It's older than language, older than diplomacy, older than reason. Fear can make people obey, surrender, and silence themselves, even when no real threat exists. But here's the twist. Most modern fear isn't physical. It's psychological. Fear of rejection, fear of embarrassment, fear of losing someone, fear of conflict, fear of being judged. As Machiavelli wrote in The Prince, it is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both. But he also understood something deeper. People who fear others become predictable. Predictability is weakness. Weakness invites domination. Real-world scenario. A manager creates a culture of subtle intimidation. No direct threats, only the fear of disapproval. Everyone obeys, not because they respect him, but because they fear rocking the boat. Effective affirmation. Fear does not guide my decisions. Logic and strength do. When fear stops dictating your behavior, you become unconquerable. Lesson 9. The trigger of over-explanation. Every time you over-explain yourself, you reveal insecurity. You reveal fear of judgment. You reveal the desire to be understood and accepted. And those who seek power can sense it instantly. Over-explaining isn't communication. It's subconscious begging. People who over-explain make themselves small. They soften their stance. They justify their existence. And manipulators feed on that. Machiavelli warned leaders never to reveal internal doubt. In modern psychological terms, the more you explain, the more you weaken your position. Real-world scenario. You say, "I can't attend." Someone asks why. Instead of stating one sentence, you provide a 3-minute explanation to sound polite. You think you're being considerate, but what you're really doing is surrendering power. Effective affirmation. My decisions require no justification. My no stands on its own. Silence is authority. Excessive explanation is surrender. Lesson 10. The trigger of predictable emotional patterns. People are easy to manipulate when their reactions are predictable. If someone knows what sets you off, what scares you, what excites you, what offends you, what flusters you, they can puppeteer your behavior with surgical precision. Psychological predators study patterns, not conversations, patterns. They observe how you respond to compliments, criticism, attention, rejection, dominance, flirtation, and silence. Once your pattern is identified, you are no longer a mystery. You're a formula. Real-world scenario. Someone realizes you get defensive when corrected. They use subtle corrections repeatedly. You become emotional. You become reactive. They become powerful. This is how chess players beat opponents before the match even begins. Not by brute force, but by predicting reactions. Effective affirmation. My emotions are unreadable. My reactions are intentional. When you break your predictable patterns, you break every chain others try to place on you. Lesson 11. The trigger of emotional mirroring. Humans are built to mirror the emotions of the people around them. It's unconscious, automatic, deeply wired into the oldest part of the brain. Manipulators know this. They don't need to force you into an emotional state. They simply enter it themselves. If they act angry, you feel tension. If they appear disappointed, you feel guilt. If they play cold, you feel the need to warm up. This is psychological puppetry at its finest. They don't attack your mind directly. They let your own nervous system do the work. Carl Jung once said, "The pendulum of the mind swings between sense and nonsense, not between right and wrong." Meaning, your emotions can be hijacked long before you notice. Real-world scenario. Someone becomes cold and distant around you. You start analyzing. You adjust your tone. You become extra polite. You shift your entire energy to match theirs, without being asked. They controlled you without a single command. Effective affirmation. I hold my emotional ground. I do not mirror instability. Your emotional center must remain unmoved, even when others try to infect it with their moods. Lesson 12. The trigger of subtle disrespect. Not all disrespect is loud. Some of it is surgical, deliberate, calculated, and nearly invisible to the untrained eye. A delayed reply, a dismissive tone, a glance that lingers a second too long. a joke that's slightly too sharp, a compliment wrapped in an insult. Most people ignore these microcuts, but Machiavelli warned that small signs of disrespect are never accidents. They are tests. Someone who subtly disrespects you is not communicating casually. They're measuring you. They want to know, will you react emotionally? Will you shrink? Will you over-explain? Or will you respond with cold, quiet strength? Real-world scenario. During a meeting, someone cuts you off mid-sentence. Not because they're rushed, because they want to signal dominance. Most people laugh it off, or emotionally retreat. A strategic mind notices and responds calmly. I wasn't finished speaking. Not aggressive, not emotional, just firm. Effective affirmation. I recognize subtle disrespect. I address it without fear. Ignoring small disrespect invites larger disrespect. Addressing it calmly sets boundaries stronger than anger ever could. Lesson 13. The trigger of emotional absolutism. Emotional absolutism is when someone tries to push you into extreme thinking. You always. You never. You should. You must. If you cared, you would. These phrases are red flags. Not because of the words, but because of the psychological intent. Absolutism forces you into defensive mode. Traps you inside their narrative. It makes you argue on their terms instead of your own. Robert Greene calls this framing manipulation. Whoever controls the frame, controls the conversation. Whoever controls the conversation, controls the outcome. Real-world scenario. You express a simple boundary. They respond. You never make time for people. They force you into defending your entire character, instead of focusing on the single situation. This is not communication. It's warfare disguised as dialogue. Effective affirmation. I reject extremist framing. I do not argue from weakness. You don't need to defend yourself. You need to break their frame. Calmly and surgically. Lesson 14. The trigger of strategic silence. Silence is not simply the absence of words. It is a weapon, a psychological lever, a mirror that forces people to confront their own mind. Those who use silence strategically can extract information, provoke insecurity, and force compliance without lifting a finger. Machiavelli observed that silence has toppled kings more efficiently than armies. When someone goes quiet at a precise moment, you begin to fill in the blanks, often exposing your fears and motivations in the process. Real-world scenario. You confront someone about an issue. They simply stop talking. They let the air grow heavy, uncomfortable, tense. Suddenly, you start explaining more. You soften your words. You fill the silence with details you should have kept to yourself. They controlled the conversation by doing nothing. Effective affirmation. Silence strengthens me. I do not fear empty space. Master silence, and you master the psychological battlefield. Lesson 15. The trigger of identity attacks. This is the deepest, darkest psychological trigger of all, because it targets not your behavior, not your choices, but your sense of self. Identity attacks sound like, you're not strong enough. You're too emotional. You're the problem. You're unworthy. You're not capable. These statements bypass logic entirely. They strike at the core of your identity, creating a moment of self-doubt. And in that moment, you become vulnerable. Manipulators use identity attacks because they reshape your worldview. If they can make you question who you are, they can make you obey who they want you to be. Carl Jung warned, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Identity attacks push unconscious insecurities to the surface, and then weaponize them. Real-world scenario. You express a new goal or ambition. Someone replies, be realistic. You've never been that kind of person. In one sentence, they force you to choose between your past limitations and your future potential. Effective affirmation. No one defines me. My identity is carved by my discipline. Your identity must be forged internally, not shaped by the expectations of others. Integrating the 15 dark triggers. You've journeyed through the psychological shadows most people never dare to explore. You've learned how ego, uncertainty, inconsistency, guilt, fear, silence, comparison, and identity attacks can dismantle your strength from the inside out. But knowledge alone is not power. Only applied knowledge is. The true transformation begins when you understand this. These triggers don't just exist in the world. They exist within you as well. Anyone can manipulate a mind that doesn't understand itself. This final section will show you how to turn every lesson into armor, into strategy, into unbreakable psychological discipline. Take a breath. This is where you become untouchable. The 3 laws of internal power. To master these triggers and prevent them from destroying you, there are 3 internal laws you must adopt. These laws are drawn from Machiavelli, Jung, Green, and centuries of human behavioral patterns. Let's break them down. Law 1. Control your inner state before controlling anything else. Every trigger you learned only works if it changes your emotional state. If your inner world is calm, disciplined, and unmoved, external manipulation collapses instantly. Machiavelli warned rulers that he who becomes predictable becomes replaceable. The same applies to emotions. If people can predict your reactions, they can control your outcomes. Practical application. Before you respond to anything, an insult, a delay, a disrespect, a provocation, pause for 3 seconds. Those 3 seconds decide everything. Those 3 seconds maintain your psychological sovereignty. Affirmation. My state is mine. No one enters without my permission. Law 2. Respond strategically, never emotionally. Every trigger you learned forces people into emotional reaction. Emotional reaction makes you blind, and blindness makes you controllable. Strategic response is different. It's measured, calm, cold, deliberate. Robert Greene wrote, "Powerful people impress and intimidate by saying less, because every unnecessary word is a window into your mind." Practical application. Limit your explanations. Shorten your responses. Turn your speech into precision, not overflow. This makes you unreadable, and the unreadable cannot be manipulated. Affirmation. I do not react. I calculate. Law 3. Become immune to external validation. Validation, approval, recognition, these are the soft spots manipulators target first. If your self-worth depends on the outside, your power belongs to the outside. You cannot be free if someone else's opinion decides who you are. Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, not who people want you to be, not who people expect you to be, not who society rewards you for being. Your identity must stand like stone." Practical application. Detach your mood from people's reactions. Detach your confidence from praise. Detach your ambition from approval. When validation loses its grip on you, your mind becomes impenetrable. Affirmation. Nothing external defines me. I walk my own path. The final synthesis. Walking through the world untouchable. Imagine yourself moving through the world with this new awareness. Aware of provocations, yet unfazed. Aware of disrespect, yet unshaken. Aware of psychological traps, yet inscrutable. The person who masters these 15 triggers becomes something rare. A presence people respect without understanding why. A mind people cannot predict. A force people cannot manipulate. You become the calmest one in the room. And the calmest one always holds the real power. Let's recap the 15 triggers in a single, sharpened list. Ego, provocation, uncertainty, emotional, overinvestment, social comparison, forced urgency, validation, hunger, guilt, manipulation, fear-based, compliance, over-explanation, predictable, emotional patterns, emotional mirroring, subtle disrespect, emotional absolutism, strategic silence, identity attacks. These aren't just traps to avoid. They are maps revealing where most humans lose control and where you will not. When you integrate these lessons, you stop living reactively and start living strategically. You step out of the emotional fog that blinds most people. You step into clarity, dominance, and inner discipline. This is the psychological armor Machiavelli would demand of a modern mind. This is the discipline strong enough to survive betrayal, chaos, conflict, pressure, intimidation, and manipulation. And now it's yours. If you ignore these triggers, they will destroy you quietly, not all at once, but piece by piece. Your confidence, your clarity, your self-worth, your power. But if you master them, if you internalize them, you don't just survive the games of human behavior, you rise above them. As Machiavelli would say, fortune favors the prepared mind. You are now prepared. You are now aware. You are now stronger than the psychological traps designed to control you. Walk forward with that awareness. Walk forward with that discipline. Walk forward with that power. If this video sharpened your mind, strengthened your discipline, or opened your eyes to the psychological games around you, then claim your next level. Like this video to strengthen the algorithm in your favor. Subscribe for more dark, strategic, mind-sharpening content. Comment, "I see the traps now," to show your transformation has begun. You've taken the first step into psychological mastery. The world is full of invisible battles, but now you walk into them armed. Stay cold. Stay aware. Stay untouchable. Machiavelli's warning.